Like, whoa.
Yeah.
All right, we've got 30 minutes, so we might jump into it, Nadine. So first, little housekeeping. Just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. Also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. You may have noticed this, but the session's being recorded, so smile along at home. This is the fourth episode of our four-part webinar series focusing on candidate experience. So we've heard from world-renowned candidate experience expert Steve Gard, gave us an evidence-based case to say why we should actually be paying attention to candidate experience and how it can be our competitive advantage. We then heard from Connor Ryan from Team Taylor, who took us through a step-by-step on how to build a perfect experience. And then last week we heard from Katie LePage and Brad Kent, who are, at the coalface, if you like, have been recognised by their peers as creating, world-class candidate experiences, and they gave us some of their learnings. But today we're going to be joined by Nadine O'Regan, from TQSolutions. Not sure if it's just me, but every time I see Nadine's posts on LinkedIn, I get a little burst of imposter syndrome. Like, this woman is so smart, I know nothing kind of feeling. So I'm sure I'm going to feel like that again today. If you don't know her, Nadine is the GM at TQSolutions, Australia's leading advisory firm for talent and people strategy, recruitment and careers consulting. Prior to TQ, Nadine has held some senior roles, talent leadership roles with companies like Macquarie Group, Citigroup, Mission Australia. If that wasn't enough, she has a husband, 3 kids, and a black belt in Taekwondo. So she is literally a weapon. So Nadine, welcome to a webinar series. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on Melbourne Cup Day.
Exactly. Well, we can do this and then jump straight to lunch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So take it away, Nadine. What have you got?
All right. So you've had some great speakers before me, so hopefully I can live up to expectations. All right. Okay, so building the business case for a great CX. So at TQSolutions, everything that we do, we have to build the business case for our clients behind all of those projects. So I like to think I'm fairly well placed to do this one. So let's see how we go. All right. So before we launch into building the business case for CX, I thought I'd just recap on why you should be investing in CX in the first place. So I know you've probably gone through some of this in the previous webinars, but I think it's a good place to start. So we'll just recap. So there's some really great case studies out there around the ROI of a good CX. The most well-known one is a fairly old one now, but it's the Virgin Media one. I don't know if you've covered that yet, but
no.
The reason why that one is a good one is because they were actually able to quantify the loss to the business in financial terms. So Virgin Media TV subscription service, they were able to identify which candidates were customers before and after their candidate experience. And through cancelled subscriptions, they were able to work out that they were losing £5.4 million a year.
Wow.
Through cancelled subscriptions from unhappy candidates. So when I think about a business case, I prefer to try and link the ROI to both direct and also indirect impacts on business profitability. Now, that's not always easy. So what I kind of refer to as are the things that we know. So what do we know? We know that a positive CX enhances your employer brand. We know that a strong employer brand impacts consumer brand perception. It also results in improved customer retention, consumer brand protection, and better quality hires. We know that we can quantify things like time to full productivity for new employees, turnover, employee engagement. We also know that things like poor onboarding experiences for a new hire can impact the time it takes for them to become fully productive. And we also know that unfilled positions lead to increased workloads on the poor buggers that are left. That causes burnout, it reduces morale, engagement, productivity, and all of those things impact work quality and customer satisfaction. So we also know that a positive CX leads to higher job acceptance rates, faster hiring times, and lower cost per hire. So we know all of those things, and there's data to support all of that. There's research out there. It's all publicly available. We also know the cost of not doing anything. So research tells us that 42% of candidates with a bad experience will stop buying from you, and 34% will discourage others from doing so as well.
Wow.
The recent Deloitte report said that 80% of candidates with a negative experience share their dissatisfaction in public and private forums, and that harms both your candidate and customer perceptions. So I kind of always say to my clients, the cumulative effect and the overall impact of the CX can have ripple effects that negatively impact your profitability. It's, I suppose, quantifying that is the challenging part, right? So by prioritizing CX and implementing efficient, but also engaging processes, it helps you to mitigate these risks, helps you to reduce costs, improves overall business outcomes. So that's, I guess, the starting point. So from here, at TQ, we talk a lot about moments that matter in all employee journeys, but especially relevant here for the CX journey. And so the moments that matter, they're basically the critical points in the candidate journey that significantly impact their overall experience of the process. So what we would do is we would sit down with a client, we would map every aspect of the candidate journey through their hiring process. And then we would work to define and analyze what are the key moments for that company.
Okay.
So we determine which moments are most relevant to your CX and hiring goals. And those moments that matter are different for every organization, right? So we also go direct to the source. So we do focus groups or stakeholder interviews or surveys with candidates at every stage of the hiring process. We work with them to identify their pain points, and then we marry these up with their expectations of what the process should be like. So can you see something on my screen? Is it coming up?
I can see plot these moments based on, yep, I can see it. Correct.
Yep. All right. Sorry. Animations are a pain in the neck sometimes.
All good. It's all good.
All right.
Like one of my demos.
Yeah, exactly. So not all moments are created equal. And we say that in TA all the time. You know, not all roles are created equal, but not all moments that matter are created equal either. So when we're looking at the moments that matter, we consider 5 key things. So which are the moments that elicit a strong emotional response from your candidate? So that is things like their interaction with your recruiters, the application process, their experience with the hiring manager and in an interview. And those are the moments that have a really lasting impact, I guess, on the candidate's opinion of your business, but also a big impact in their decision-making process, whether they decide to join you or not. Second thing we look at is how often do they occur? So those are the moments that happen regularly and are more likely to influence overall perception. So things like consistency of communication, timely responses, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Third thing that we look at is, do they affect a large portion of the candidate population? So here, think about things like their experience and interaction with your careers website, the ease of the application portal, and the communication channels, I guess, that all candidates interact with. And then we also look at the moments that disproportionately impact key talent groups. And this is the one that people often forget. So what are the key talent groups or the business critical roles for your business? And what are the moments that impact them especially? And then finally, all of these moments aligned with the business strategy, culture, and values. So this involves things like making sure that your employer brand and your values are integrated into every touch point in the candidate journey. So once we've got all of these mapped, identified, and prioritized, you can then get started on the business case to improve the business outcomes. We essentially plot them for ease of implementation and potential ROI.
Yep.
And that gives you an idea of where you can see quick wins versus those, big rocks.
Sure.
Hard to implement. It might be like a CRM system, right? So hard to implement, but potentially a really high return on investment.
Yep.
We would suggest a combination of big rocks and quick wins, but always start with your quick wins.
Okay. And obviously, that pink one down in the bottom right corner is probably the one we're going to least focus on because it's hard and there's minimal return, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we also know from experience that there are a few key moments in the process that have a disproportionate impact on ROI. So these are the things where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So they're things like animation worked,
Yep.
or a great pre-boarding and onboarding process. The pre-boarding part is often forgotten. And I think this is partly because TA kind of hand over responsibility in a lot of businesses to another department to handle this. But the pre-boarding and the onboarding process are mission critical. An easy one-click application. So if you've got lengthy application forms or people have to duplicate data entry and all that sort of stuff, that's going to have a big impact.
So if I'm uploading my CV and then retyping it into fields.
Yeah, exactly. So my 15-year-old son has just gone through the application process for his first job with lots and lots of companies like, all the big retailers, all the big fast food joints and all that sort of stuff. I sat with him and did them all, and the difference in the application experience is phenomenal. Some were just a one-click apply, pass your resume, easy, done. Others were a complicated process, you have to put everything in. Others didn't even need a resume, just a chatbot in the corner and boom, you're in.
Wow. And for a 15-year-old, that's highly attractive, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Probably for a 54-year-old too, actually.
Anyway, yeah. And interestingly, some of them, submit a video. We've got generational issues with that sort of stuff. If it's McDonald's, great. But, the application process and the experience of that is really important. Okay. The third thing, I guess, is clear upfront expectations about the hiring process. And that includes how long it's going to take. Every candidate should have a realistic expectation as they start the process. And then throughout the process, you need to be maintaining clear communication and offering regular updates of where they're up to.
Yep. It's that case of no news is news, right?
Exactly.
So if we haven't made a decision, that's okay. Just tell someone we haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they know where they're up to, it's kind of okay. Yeah. Fairness in the hiring process counts for a lot, though. So being able to justify your hiring decision by using objective methods and really giving candidates the opportunity to showcase their skills is really important. So a candidate shouldn't go through the process and feel like they weren't given a fair opportunity to demonstrate their skills. And they need to also, you need to be able to justify why you hired one person over another.
Yeah. And does that start really with the JD? Yeah.
Absolutely. So a good success profile is the basis for a good hiring process, right? As long as there's no point having a great PD if you've got a terrible interview process. They all need to be integrated. Creating an inclusive experience is also really important. So all candidates should feel respected and valued, whether they've got a disability or neurodiverse or anything in between. And feedback. So I think as recruiters, we all know this, but providing feedback to candidates, but also getting feedback from candidates is really important as well. So these are the kind of most impactful moments where you get the biggest bang for your buck. So if you can only do one thing, you should choose from this list.
Right. Screenshot, everybody.
All right, so we move on to building the business case. So I think HR tend to struggle with this. And I think they tend to struggle with this because they really struggle with where to go to get information and how to clearly show an impact to the bottom line. So HR have been historically crap with data, and in part because a lot of that ROI is indirect. So it's hard to quantify. Doesn't mean that it's not possible, though. So CEOs.
Do you think a lot of the data that HR or TA have focused on traditionally has come from the recruitment agency model, around time to fill, those kind of metrics that are driven by the billing, process?
Yeah, I think so. I think for business, speed is important, right? But I don't think there's many hiring managers out there that would say they would prefer a candidate quickly over the right candidate over a longer period of time. I've been quite vocal about this previously on, public posts and whatnot. I'm not a fan of operational metrics. But what I am a fan of is operational metrics used strategically. So I'll cover that shortly, but
Awesome.
if you're looking at things like time to fill and time to hire as a performance metric, they're not great tools. But if you are linking them to a strategic metric, they can be important.
Yep.
So every CEO, I guess, is looking for some way to quantify value. And that's where a really strong business case comes in. So basically, before you do anything, though, go and find advocates or champions in the business. So go and find the stakeholders that are negatively impacted by poor candidate experience. They've got roles vacant, it takes ages to hire, they've got people that are burning out in their team, it's impacting their ability to, make sales targets and all that sort of stuff. But also go and find the stakeholders who appreciate the correlation between candidate experience and profitability. So there's always advocates, there's always champions, but those are the areas where you can pilot and test and iterate some of these things. Start by gathering data. You have to have a baseline. You have to be able to see where you've improved. So use anything that you can get your hands on. If you don't already have it, survey candidates. So identify where you can improve and try and quantify overall candidate satisfaction. As I said, I'm not a fan of time to fill, time to hire, or cost per hire as operational metrics, but as strategic measures, they can be really valuable. So track those metrics, not to measure your recruiter performance, but to showcase the inefficiencies and the costs associated with lengthy processes.
And when you say, survey candidates, I'm assuming that includes both winners and losers, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Candidates that were unsuccessful, how was the journey? How could we improve? Yep.
Yes, your rejected candidates are a pool of information because they're not reveling in the glow of success, shall we say. Yeah.
And most candidates are, I think, accepting that someone is going to get the job and dozens aren't, right? So it's more about having that kind of transparency with them, or that, I guess, treating them with some kind of integrity. Hey, we know you didn't make it, you're a great candidate, how could we look after you in the future?
Yeah, and as I was saying to a client of mine the other day when we were presenting a business case, you hire 2,000 roles a year and you reject 84,000 people a year. Those 84,000 people get nothing except a stock standard rejection letter. If you can quantify the impact that has on your consumer brand for 84,000 unhappy people, you've got a really good business case right there, right?
Yeah, 100%. I was at a thing last year, or maybe earlier this year, and a really large luxury travel group was talking about how they give vouchers. I think it's $500 or $1,000 to unsuccessful candidates. Not all candidates that apply, but anyone that makes it through to the next stage. And they could show that that generated about $2 million worth of revenue off the back of the vouchers being claimed. Really nice, kind of, hey, thank you, here's something for your time. And especially when it puts money back into the coffers of the business.
Yeah, I've heard about all sorts of things like loyalty cards and free 1 month subscriptions, this sort of stuff. You don't have to necessarily give something tangible, as long as they walk away feeling like they were treated fairly, that they were communicated with. And one of my favorite clients, Matt Lant at Africa, says every candidate should gain something from the experience. So we talk about candidate value, right? So they should, if nothing else, learn something about themselves through the process and be able to take that away. Acceptance rates are another one. So offer acceptance rates, by measuring that, you can show how the candidate experience impacts your ability to convert talent as well. So if you're making lots of offers and not securing them, you've got an issue. And then connecting poor onboarding experiences and turnover rates to the CX is another really good indirect cost. So what we would do from here is we would build a roadmap for change, and we would quantify the ROI at each stage. We would do focus on all the things that the C-suite want to hear about, and they're things like business value, ROI, strategic alignment, all of those sexy things, right? You also have to be prepared and anticipate any potential concerns. Typically, I group them in 3 buckets: cost, time, and impact. So you need to be prepared to show how the ROI outweighs any initial expense. If anything, they don't always have to cost money. You should start small by implementing manageable changes. So those pilot groups, test and iterate, focus on those quick wins, start demonstrating the value of CX, and then scale over time. And then set clear targets. So make sure that the C-suite or your leadership team are very, very clear on what the targets are, what the baseline is, and where you want to be. So you need to be reporting on those regularly. Oh, so a lot of companies just lump this all in the too hard basket, right? So, and a common excuse that I get is we just don't have any data. Maybe they're not able to get the information that they need from their ATS. That's a really common one. They're kind of hamstrung by legacy tech. It doesn't give them the data that they need. Maybe they don't even have an ATS, or maybe they just don't know where to go to get it. So I always say, the good news is every company has to pay their people. So you have payroll data for a start. That includes joiners and leavers, what they're paid. It has all the demographics. So you've got that as a starting point, if nothing else, right? You also have a marketing department. So they will have some transferable skills and know how to measure a lot of this stuff. So how do they measure the ROI of a sales campaign? Steal some of their formulas and apply it to TA, right? Work with finance. So beg, borrow, or steal the baseline data you need to build your business case, because it does exist.
Yep.
You can also get a lot of this externally. If you can't get it internally for whatever reason, you can get a lot of it externally. So you can look at enterprise platforms like Gartner, Seek, LinkedIn Talent Market Insights, publicly available benchmark reports like Steve Gard's candidate experience one, or Phenom's State of CX report is a really good one. You can also use labour market data. Australian Bureau of Statistics release data every month. You can use AI tools. You can even use tools like levels.fyi, which is great for REM benchmarking and other information on REM and salary. And if you've got the luxury of being able to utilize paid tools, you might be able to license a tool like Talent Neuron or Lightcast for benchmark data. They're not necessarily better than what you can get that's publicly available and free, but it does serve it up to you nice and easily, so you don't have to necessarily go trawling for the information.
And would it be safe if we're building a candidate experience from scratch, or I mean, actually not from scratch, because we already have one, right? We've got a business with delivering a candidate experience, but if we haven't evolved that at all, like any data that we can sort of leverage to take to the C-suite is going to be beneficial, right? Even if they go, can you show me this? Then you go and find that. It's a start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has to be data driven.
Yeah.
And this is why HR projects often fall flat, is because they don't demonstrate it. So it loses traction with the leadership team. Eventually they're like, oh yeah, HR are off doing their thing, you know, or warm fuzzy stuff. If you want to get traction with them, you have to be able to baseline, show improvements, and link it to value.
Yep.
Glassdoor, Reddit, you know, all of those sites. Also, you can look at candidate sentiment. You can see what people are saying about your brand. There's lots of information out there once you start looking, basically. So I'm not going to go through this slide in a lot of detail. It might make your head explode, but this is just an example of a formula that we've come up with a client. So we worked with finance to actually quantify the financial impact that their CX was having. And that's not just possible, but I would say highly recommended, right? So what CFO doesn't want to know how much value their TA team is adding to the business? What chief marketing officer wouldn't like to know the value of the CX on the consumer brand and sales?
100%.
It's a lost opportunity if you're not doing this already. So this slide is just to show you that it's possible. These are examples of equations we've used to quantify the impact of improvements on profitability, and also the cost saving from CX improvements. And these formulas might look different for every business.
Okay.
So it's around how does your business define it, and how do you measure it? So if you can't come up with this on your own, which I suggest you probably wouldn't, finance can help you, or external consultant like TQ would be able to do something like this for you as well. So you've spent time identifying your problem, you've gathered the data, you've built the business case. Now you have to actually present it and get budget approval, right? So you need to make a compelling business case. You need to be able to demonstrate the negative impact of a poor CX on the company's profitability, and you need to be able to demonstrate the positive potential ROI. So to do this properly, you really need to know who you're talking to start with. So tailor your business case to the specific interests of the audience. What I mean by that, so if you're talking to the CFO, focus on the financial metrics like cost savings and the impact on profitability. If you're talking to the COO, emphasize operational efficiencies, time to fill reductions, how investments in CX can optimize processes. If you're talking to the chief HR officer, highlight the impact on your employer brand, engagement, retention, as well as how it marries with the broader HR strategy, right? So really think about who you're presenting to and target your business case based on that. As I said already, be ready to discuss any potential concerns around cost, time, and impact, and then focus on the business outcomes. So frame your arguments in terms of business value, ROI, risk mitigation, and alignment with the business's broader strategic goals. Don't use HR jargon. It's not HR buzzword bingo, right? Just scrap the jargon, talk like you're talking to the business.
And when I've presented these like business cases, whether it's for something I'm selling or internally, I generally find if I go to those stakeholders earlier with their part of it and get their buy-in and refine it, so that when we bring it together, all the stakeholders are there and they can actually defend their part of the slides. And so it kind of becomes, you know, that the discussion's already well underway with all parties. Now they're just Oh, you had that same need, Nadine. Okay, great. Marketing over here, we share that same sort of challenge. This is great. This is really going to solve it. Is that how you would sort of normally break it down before doing a full group presentation?
Yeah, so if your CFO, CMO, CTO, and Crow are hearing about your candidate experience initiative for the first time when you present the business case, you've done something wrong, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be engaging with all of those stakeholders very, very early in the process, because there is no point telling them what they want when you haven't asked them what they want, right?
Yeah.
So you will always get better buy-in by engaging people early.
Awesome.
Quantify the impact. We've talked about that. So make sure you're using financial return on investment. Choose the right time. So you don't always have the luxury of this, unfortunately, but if you can, and you do need to request budget, try and do it during your company's annual budget review cycle. Or when the business is going through some change. It might be significant headcount growth, or it could even be that you now have to do more with less in your TA team. Okay, well, we need to really get bang for our buck in terms of the CX experience. Leverage your advocates. So, they can be those hiring managers that are, experiencing pain. It could be your chief marketing officer who's suddenly realized the untapped potential of the candidate, market. Whatever it is, leverage them when you're doing your presentation, and make the business case short and compelling. I always try to keep it to 2 to 4 key points on a slide and 3 slides maximum. So if you can't get your argument across in 3 slides at the C-suite level, you're going to lose them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you've now got your business case approved because you're amazing, and you are now measuring success, right? So if you're not adopting a data-driven approach, you're going to lose momentum really quickly. So you need measurable and meaningful targets in place, and you need to be regularly reporting back. So it's really important that you look at both quantitative and qualitative metrics, though, plus overlay it with external data, and then use that to iterate and continuously improve, right? So qualitative, that can be, stakeholder surveys are a great source of information. So conducting those surveys after key stages in the process, implementing a net promoter score, surveying candidates who were offered a position and were not offered a position, but also hiring managers. So, we also have to consider their experience through the process, and then go and compare your candidate feedback with the internal perceptions of the hiring process to try and uncover any gaps. So your company might think they are amazing at communication, but candidates might think you fall short when they're comparing you to your competitors, right? So it's really important to look for the perception gaps as well.
And I guess you've done that to build the business case. You've done some data and some quantifying with candidates and hiring managers already to set that low benchmark to get the business case. Now we're just going, hey, in the first 3 months, we've improved from A to B. Next 3 months, we've tweaked this. Sorry.
Yeah. No. And then quantitative, so that's your hard data. You can use your ATS if you've got one to track candidate behavior and engagement. Those metrics like application completion rates, time spent in each stage. You can even look at web traffic, how long they're spending on your site, how long it takes them to apply, how often your recruiters are communicating with them, all of those sorts of things. So all of that data can be used to identify bottlenecks or areas where candidates are dropping out of your process, right? Then there's operational metrics, which I don't like, but time to hire and offer acceptance and all of those sorts of things that are linked to your moments that matter. So you need to be measuring those as well. But I'm a bit of a data nerd, right? So don't rely on high-level data as the source of truth. As I always say, correlation does not necessarily equal causation.
Okay.
You need to segment your data. So it's not a zero-sum game. So Improvements in processes for, say, women, because you've got a quota to hit, may mean your men are having a terrible experience. So just because the overall experience is lifted doesn't mean that the experience for everyone has lifted. So I would say you need to segment your data. Things like job type, gender, diversity, things like neurodiversity, disability, generation is one that's often forgotten, race, ethnicity, all of those sorts of things where you might have potential biases and where certain groups may be having a less positive experience.
Makes total sense.
Leveraging external data. So don't forget the external data. Keep comparing yourself. Monitor platforms like Glassdoor and LinkedIn and Indeed to look at public perception. Track how you're comparing to industry benchmarks and identify where you're doing well, where versus where you may be falling behind. And then lastly, continuously improve and keep reporting on it. So treat measuring CX as an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event. So you may need to pivot, iterate at different points. Your strategy in 12 months' time may look very different to what it does today, but you need to remain accountable. So by being accountable, you also need to hold the business to a higher standard. So report regularly and track performance against targets and keep the business updated on how they're tracking against those. Now, this is just an example. So I've taken the branding off this, but this is an actual real-time roadmap that we have used with a client. See, so it doesn't need to be bigger than Ben-Hur. Obviously, the one that we would build with the TA team would be very different and very detailed. This is what we're presenting to a leadership team. So super simple, just those really important 4 moments that matter in the first 12 months. And then on the back of that, we would report on it. So again, real life example of a quarterly report for a client on their CX transformation. It's super simple, it's concise, it's very, very focused on 4 key deliverables. It's 1 page. And we've also quantified in dollars the cost savings and the impact on profitability down the bottom. So you don't need to be producing a 40-page white paper every quarter to report back to the C-suite. And as I said earlier, if you do, you're probably going to lose them.
Yeah.
So that's it. So hopefully I have.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
How we do it.
That is fantastic. I actually was trying to look like I knew what I was talking about by asking some questions and write notes at the same time, and I've got just over 2 pages of notes. So I'm just going to quickly recap a couple of key things that I took away, and then I'm going to ask you what is one thing that you hope everyone else takes. So first one was CX has an impact on profitability, and it's hard to quantify, but I think the really good news there is it's not impossible. Data is available. And so, where we kind of go, oh, I'd like to do that, but gee, I don't have the data. I think you've shown us that everybody actually has some base data without adding any technology today, or even any cost. Focus on high return on investment strategies that are easier to achieve, instant bang for buck, which is obviously going to, get more interest from the C-suite. I like the 7 tips, but I couldn't write them down as quickly as you moved on. But every candidate should gain something from your CX, so that's if we just have that mindset, it's a great way to sort of build our candidate experience. And something that I think you touched on it, we've all got payroll data, we might have ATS data. But the other one that it's so just obvious is gathering relevant data. Start with the stakeholders and their pain points. So going around to those key hiring managers who have critical roles and they just cannot fill them, or people are transitioning out really quickly. I just was like, far out, yeah. And what does that cost? Finance can definitely help us with that for sure. So yeah, thank you so much, Nadine. What if I was taking one thing away, or the audience is, what would you like that to be?
Baseline. So you can't add value if no one knows where you're starting from. So as I said, beg, borrow, or steal. any data that you can to
Yep.
baseline your current performance. That would be the one thing. That is not a nice to have, it's essential. From there, once you've got the baseline, it's a much, much easier sell, right? In fact, it's not a sell. It's a, I actually presented to a board a couple of years ago on this topic and presented the business case, and the chairman just turned around and said, we would actually be irresponsible if we didn't do this.
Yeah.
Right. So
now it's changes. Everyone's like, okay, how do we fix this problem?
Yeah, exactly. So, we're touching all of these people. We've never really considered the value of that population. And, in many instances, we're treating those people appallingly.
Mm.
So, and a lot of these things don't have to cost money either. So, making sure that your hiring managers know how to accommodate a person with a disability in the interview process, that doesn't cost anything. Making sure that your hiring managers have got robust interview guides that are aligned to the success profile for the role, that doesn't cost anything. So a lot of this stuff is just foundational stuff, getting your house in order.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to cost a lot. You might want to go and implement a CRM or build a whole new website and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. But some of the basic things that have the biggest impact don't necessarily cost money.
Yeah, interesting. Really good. Thank you so much, Nadine. I know we've gone over time, so some people will be on their second coffee by now, I would imagine.
Or their first wine if they're going to the races.
Yeah, exactly. But I need to go and get dressed on that note. But just check. I don't think we have any questions, but I think a lot of people will be running off to Melbourne Cup. We will send the recording of this out to everyone who registered. Nadine, thank you so much. Good luck if you are having a drink or a punt today. But yeah, really appreciate your time. It's been fantastic. Thank you.